Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Happy Sunday, everybody. I hope everybody had as good of a weekend as I did. Not just personally, that was great. All kinds of good stuff happening. Welcome to you. Welcome to Game Over Toronto. If it is your first time here, my name is Lauren. This is the post-game show for the Toronto Maple Leafs game after they beat Carolina in their own barn 4-1 to cap off their last back-to-back of the season in game number 80. No, never too late for the Leafs to have a late back-to-back in the season. Like I said, my name is Lauren. Happy to have you here. I hope you have had a wonderful weekend. I myself have had my weekend could not have been much better. And on top of that, the Leafs get 4 points out of 4 points on their last back-to-back of the season. Big win against Montreal last night. Big win against Carolina tonight. Still first in the division. If Tampa loses, I mean, last I checked, they were up, I think 3-2 against Buffalo. Let me see here. Oh, the Lightning just scored again. So 4-2. So it's gonna come down to the wire here, folks. The whole season, whether the Leafs face Tampa or Ottawa, is gonna come down to the last two games. Not what we've had in the years previous, but a very good problem to have. So we're going to talk all about that. We're going to talk the playoffs. We're going to talk about how unbelievable Joseph Woll was. Al down in the chat already saying brick wall. Absolutely, man. And yeah, it's going to be a great show tonight. So thank you for being here. If you could just hit like, if you could hit subscribe, if you could share this with a friend, that would make the stream all the better. But if you're listening, if you could just give us a 5-star rating, anything like that, we appreciate all of you just being here, watching, listening, being with me on this nice early. It's still light out and I get to stream, so that never happens. So let's get right into it. The first 17 minutes of this game were a slog. Last night against the Montreal Canadiens, the Leafs really dominated the majority of that game in terms of the shot counter. They did a phenomenal job last night of minimizing Montreal's chances, really doing a good job of cycling the puck well and everything like that. And tonight it really felt like the shoe was on the other foot for the Leafs. It felt like for the first 17 minutes, the Leafs could not do anything. They had one shot on goal until quite literally 2 minutes to go. Steven Lawrence's birthday, congratulations. Unfortunately, he didn't score. Carolina, right to begin the game, they hemmed the Leafs in for a full 90 seconds. It really was a shooting gallery for the first 18 minutes of that game. It was just a shooting gallery. And it is Joseph Woll's work and his ethic and his decision making and his ability to move quickly throughout the crease that is the reason that the Leafs came out of that period not just tied but up 1-0. Definitely the only good thing that came out of that first period, other than the goal obviously, is the fact that Joseph Woll heard all of the media and heard all of the naysaying and questioning and unfaithful Leafs, not the faithful, the unfaithful, about who was going to be the starter, and him planting a flag in that crease saying, this is mine and you'll have to take it from me. For the Leafs goalies to go into this last back-to-back of the season and to allow one goal in the last back-to-back in both games in 120 minutes is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Anthony Stolarz obviously getting the shutout last night. It was just a 1-0 game last night. Went all the way to overtime. So unbelievable play by him last night. And then tonight, Joseph Woll doing his very best to carve himself a permanent place as the Leafs started going into next Saturday, which is when the playoffs are more than likely going to start for the Leafs. I know that the Leafs are playing all the way up. They play today. The last two games is Tuesday and then Thursday against, I believe, Detroit and Buffalo. And it's really interesting that this year nothing is cemented. They have not won the Atlantic. They technically have a home ice advantage, but they have not won the Atlantic. It might go all the way to the last game of the season. And how exciting. So, again, to start off the game, the Leafs literally with one shot with 6 minutes and 11 seconds to go, they were just holding on to their shorts, really just trying to clear the zone. And as soon as they would clear, Carolina would get it, bring it back in, and would just wave after wave after wave and pressure and pressure. Unbelievable play by Joseph Woll that whole first period. Just unstoppable. They get a really good chance with about 2 minutes to go, and then who else but Pontus Holmberg? Will the real Pontus Holmberg please stand up? Puts the Leafs up by 1. Their second shot of the game with 16.5 seconds to go. He essentially buries a rebound from Morgan Rielly and Brandon Carlo. A very nice play, a very nice move. And it really felt like, the puck luck might be on the Leafs side tonight, despite the fact that they did not play well in the first period. They go into the first intermission with a 1-0 lead, with the shots incredibly tilted 13-5 in favor of Carolina. And then going into the second period, the Myers interference, Poppy clears it. They end up killing it off. Bobby McMahon gets a really good breakaway in the second period, but isn't able to create enough space for himself. And then Austin Matthews doubles up for the Leafs with 9:40 to go in that second period. He essentially had the puck, passed it to Morgan Rielly, who passed it back to him, and he one-times it in a very, very good Austin Matthews-esque Austin Matthews goal. That's the kind of goal that all season, with this injury that he's had, those have not gone in. Have not. Not since the Four Nations, not during Four Nations, not really before Four Nations. Ever since the beginning of the season, we know that he's been plagued with injury. Obviously, it's his 9th consecutive 30-plus goal season, which is in fairness, a huge accomplishment. However, when you go from having 69 goals to being able to daydream about hitting 40, it's clear that the Leafs captain is not his normal self. And leading into this game, leading into this final stretch, leading, down the runway so that we're taking off into the playoffs now, we were all kind of hoping that Austin Matthews, his shot would come back. And tonight, it did. Again, I don't know if it's the air in Carolina or if it's just the early game, but that was an unbelievable read by him, an unbelievable play, an unbelievable shot. Gosh, I love that guy plays on our team and is our captain. Taylor Hall takes a tripping penalty with 4:22 to go. They can barely even gain the zone, and it's killed off. And we go into the second intermission up 2-0, but the shots noticeably less tilted. They ended up correcting the shots after the first period to, I believe, 11-5. But at the end of the second period, the shots were 13-12. So Toronto making up a lot of ground. I don't know what it was in that first period. Maybe it was just the early game with the travel or what, but the Leafs looked like a completely different team in the second period. And then going into the third period, William Nylander with a nice early goal, putting them up 3-0, a minute and 25 in. Benoit does an unbelievable job just holding the puck in the zone, getting a nice shot to Domi, who gets a very nice shot pass, and then a tip by William Nylander. Hard to stop that. All night, Joseph Woll, we're going to talk about him more in the third segment here, was doing a really good job controlling all of his rebounds. There was a double minor, like a 4-minute minor, essentially 2 back-to-back penalties on Brandon Tanev. Chris Tanev, Brandon Tanev. Golly, that's a different timeline. Chris Tanev with a high stick and a tripping penalty. And they managed to kill that whole thing off, which is great, except for the fact, well, they kill the first one off. Sebastian Aho ends up getting one over Woll's glove, going up 3-1 with 12 minutes to go. But as, again, the game went on, the third line was really cranking. The fourth line had some really good opportunities. Dakota Mermis, who came in and was playing on the Leafs back end tonight with Jake McCabe and OEL obviously being out, still being hurt, being, getting some extra days before it cranks up to the games that we're all really caring about next week. He was doing a heck of a job making a spot for himself and putting pucks on net, creating lots of chaos. And then essentially what ends up happening is with 4:17 to go, at that point, 5 minutes left, it really felt like Carolina was more than likely going to pull Freddie Anderson and try to do their best to make up the ground and maybe squeeze a point out of Toronto here. But instead, Domi gets a really nice shot. He gets his own rebound and passes it to John Tavares, who sort of knuckle pucks it over Freddie Anderson's up on the top shelf there, getting his 38th of the year. The Leafs ice it with 2 minutes to go. Carlo takes a trip with 1:16 to go. The Leafs kill it off, and they win 4-1 with the shots 26-19, so still very heavily weighed in favor of Carolina. Oh, okay. We almost had the results of the Lightning and Sabres game. Safe to say that this is definitely going to go to the last couple of games of the season here. But considering how they started, I couldn't be more pleased with how the Leafs played tonight. They did not do a good job in the first period of getting in lanes, blocking shots, making good reads, making good pass decisions, being first to pucks, winning puck battles. All of those small details were shite all in the first period. But, it just goes to show you can play a bad period and still come out with the lead if you play your cards right. So that's what ends up happening, and that first goal really does sort of light the fire under their cauldron, so to speak, and they come out like a different team in the second, finishing hard, and Joseph Woll leading the way just with an unbelievable play, stopping 25 of 26 shots for Carolina, and that is a difficult team. Carolina is ramping up to face New Jersey next week, essentially, in the playoffs. All of those, most of the other matchups in terms of the whole league have almost entirely been decided, but the Atlantic is still not entirely wide open, but for the most part, it's going down to the wire. So let's actually, since I'm already talking about it, let's just move over into the second period and talk about some of the playoff stuff that is coming. Before I do that, please make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe, make sure you tell all your friends about us here at Game Over, because I will tell you, this is fun. Us doing this during the regular season is great, but it's nothing like it is in the playoffs. The playoffs here on Game Over, we have multiple hosts on every stream. It's always more active. It's always a really good time. And you can be a part of that, either by hitting like, hitting subscribe, sharing with a friend of yours that's another Leafs fan, or maybe they're a fan of another Canadian team that's going into the playoffs. Unfortunately, that includes Ottawa. Or maybe you're a Habs fan who is chomping at the bit and hoping that your team squeaks one in here and that Columbus continues to fall from the standings. Or maybe you're a Winnipeg Jets fan. Or maybe you have the unfortunateness of being an Oilers fan. Just kidding. I'm obviously rooting for most of the Canadian teams to go far in the playoffs. Obviously, it is no secret right now with what's going on in North America in terms of politicalis that there is a lot of patriotism that we as Canadian Leaf fans feel, that Canadian Leaf fans feel in general, and I'm sure that it's the same for people down in the States. The game earlier this week where the Leafs were playing against Florida, not in Tampa, but the game in Florida, there's USA, USA, USA chants, and it's like, my guy, it's like game 77. What the heck? But I get it. There is a lot of Canadian pride, and we take pride in Game Over of being a Canadian company. We were started by Canadians. We are run by Canadians. And we think what we have is pretty special, and we would love for you to be a part of that. We have all kinds of links down below for different ways you can get a hold of us. We obviously have our website, gameovernetwork.com. We have everything on social media, Blue Sky, Twitter, etc. Again, the gameovernetwork.com, not .com, Game Over Network. I myself am on Blue Sky as well. But let's say maybe you're a small business owner. Maybe you would like to do a little bit of promotion stuff, especially going into the playoffs when our views get ratcheted up like crazy. All of those links are down in the description below. You're also welcome to join us over on Patreon. It does not require money. We do have a free tier that allows you to have a little bit more access to not just myself, but other hosts as well, and some of the content that we put out. So make sure you go check that out. But especially with the playoffs coming up, my biggest ask is just that you donate a little bit of your time and tell somebody that you know that's a big hockey fan about us, because we were pretty big last year, and then when everything got hung up, it sort of got paused, and then resetting has been tricky, for sure. But we're confident that we're going to get exactly where we were and far beyond that, and you being here is a big part of that. So I'll stop the gushing now, and let's move over into the second period and talk about the fact that the Leafs are on the cusp of actually winning the Atlantic Division. Now, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to keep talking here while this other game finishes. So end of the second period, the Lightning are up on the Sabres 5-2. Which means it is near impossible for the Leafs to clinch the Atlantic Division tonight. It is not impossible. It could happen. Is it probable? No. Or in the words of one of my favorite shows, Mythbusters, is it plausible? Not really. The Maple Leafs, the Lightning still have one game in hand. There is a chance that they could win. If the Leafs win either of the games this week, then they win the division. And just so that you're aware, as we wrap up and go into the playoffs. The Tuesday game against Sabres and the last game of the season against the Red Wings on this upcoming Thursday. Both myself and Zach will be on both of those streams, so please make sure you're here for that. So it definitely looks like the earliest that the Leafs are going to be able to clinch is on Thursday, or on Tuesday rather. Obviously, if Tampa loses their next game, then they're out of the running in terms of top of the wild card. The Panthers slipping now. It is impossible for them to win the Atlantic Division. It's sort of crazy. Normally, the Atlantic Division is so much more cutthroat, but also so much more decided so early on. Like, I'm just looking at the West now. The Central Division, the Jets have won their division with 114 points. Chasing up their tails is Dallas. In the Pacific, the Golden Knights have won their division with 107 points. The Kings just behind them in second place with 101, and then the Oilers at 97 points. And the Leafs have 104, and the next two teams both have 98, which is pretty crazy. And then the Capitals are all the way up at 109 points. Man, I do not envy the team that has to go and face the Capitals right now. Like, that doesn't sound like any kind of fun. No, thank you. Jeez. So yeah, it looks like the game won't be over for us. It definitely is it possible? Yes. I don't think it's plausible that the Leafs win the Atlantic tonight. But they're going to be going to Buffalo, or they're going to be playing against Buffalo on Tuesday. We know that the Leafs oftentimes do not play well against teams that are under them in terms of the standings. Now, having said that, they did beat Montreal last night 1-0. They did beat Carolina tonight, which is another very good playoff team. Tonight was definitely a tougher game than I think most of us were expecting it to be. But again, going into the playoffs, none of that matters. The only thing that really matters is how the Leafs play next week. This time next week, how they're playing. The fact of the matter is, a couple of our players are still out, right? Jake McCabe's still out, OEL out, David Kamp's still out. Apparently, Jake McCabe is expected back before the end of the season. If I'm being honest, if it's me, if they play on Tuesday and the Leafs lock up the top spot in the Atlantic, you do not play Jake McCabe. You should not play Chris Tanev. You shouldn't play just call every single one of the Toronto Marlies. Alex Steeves, you have been elected to be the first line center on the Toronto Maple Leafs, because I tell you, it's looking more and more like the Leafs are going to face the Sens. And I know that historically that looks good for Toronto, because the Leafs have always beat the Sens in the playoffs. We like that part of the Battle of Ontario. Having said that, this year the Leafs lost the season. They do not play well against the Senators. They usually get absolutely trucked by Brady Tkachuk. On top of that, they have some really good goaltending now. I won't lie. I would rather face Ottawa than the Habs. I don't want to face the Habs. No, thank you. I have enough bad memories of Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki skating down the ice towards my goaltender and scoring. I would rather not think of that again. I would rather not have a repeat of that. So if anybody from the Leafs ends up watching this, which, hi, nice for you to be here. Please do everything you can to face Ottawa and not the Habs, because, oh my gosh, I will not recover. So really quickly, we are going to talk. We're going to take some of your questions from the chat over in the overtime period. So make sure you get those questions down there. Big shout out for Al. Thank you for going to Record Store Day yesterday. I really appreciate you. For all those, and Terry in the chat, welcome back, Terry. Go Leafs go. What a great win against the Canes. Absolutely. For all those debtors on Toronto sports media today that said the Leafs were going to lose, I have two words for you. F and U. Good one. Luke Venables, as always, Luke, thank you for being here, pal. Tampa is probably about to win, too. Bummer, yeah. Terry, what a wobbly goal by Tavares. Still counts. Still counts. Just like that one really bad dribble in goal that happened last year for the Bruins. Still counts. Even if it sucks. And I hate it. And I don't want it to count. It still unfortunately does. Now, if you're watching this or you're listening, who do you want the Leafs to face? Do you want them to face Tampa, or would you rather face the Sens? Why don't you put the answer for that in the comments? or in the chat, actually, and we can use that to talk about in the overtime period. Would you rather face Vasilevsky and the Tampa Bay Lightning, who you did beat last week, and who you have beat in playoff series before, recently? Or do you go against a team that you do not have any traumatic memories against in terms of the playoffs recently? Who would you rather face? I know that the Leafs have done a better job this year against getting goals in behind Vasilevsky. A couple of years ago, man, when Tampa went on that crazy playoff run, Vasilevsky was probably the biggest proprietor of their success. And not to say that he isn't that good, and again, knock on wood, this is not me attempting to jinx anything. Having said that, at the same time, the Leafs have done a very good job in the last couple of years of really making Vasilevsky seem human and make him look like somebody you can score goals against with a shred of ease. The Leafs against the Sens, not so much. And I don't know what it is. Like, I do think that Tampa is a harder team to play against, but there's just something about the Battle of Ontario now that's starting to rear its ugly head again. I remember being young and seeing like Daniel Alfredson and Danny Heatley and those guys and Jason Spezza. Like, those guys as a group used to give me nightmares as a kid. And now you have people like Brady Tkachuk and you have Tim Stützle and you have so many of these other players and people that Ottawa's managing to get. And it is good for the sport. It is good for Canada that more Canadian teams are in the playoffs this year. It is. And if you don't believe that, then I'm sorry to tell you that you're wrong. I do, if you're asking me, I would rather face Tampa because it's a known evil. And I know that we can beat that evil. I know we've done it before. And I know that I love nothing more than watching Matthew Nice score goals in Amalie Arena. Oh, boy, does that guy love scoring goals there. I think I would rather go with, what is it? It's better to go with the devil you know than the one that you don't. So make sure you put your answer down in the chat so I can read them all in the overtime period. But before we do that, let's move over into the third period. Please, if you're able to, go scroll down in the links below. Go over to the Game Over Network, our main hub channel, and go check out Hyperdrive Hockey. Now, before the stream starts, you see Daphne and all these different people's names. Those are all the people from Hyperdrive Hockey. So Hyperdrive Hockey is our flagship show. Comes out a couple times a week. Talks about hockey news from all over the world, all different leagues, not just the NHL, but the KHL, the OHL, the AHL, etc. PWHL news. Little bit about the PWHL yesterday. Canadian Tire on the Queensway in Etobicoke. I managed to meet Carly C.J. Jackson, the backup goalie for the Toronto Raptors. So if they end up seeing this, thank you for signing my Toronto 6 hat, my champs hat from the Toronto 6. They're the Toronto women's hockey team before the Raptors. Carly Jackson was on that team when they won the Isabel Cup a couple of years ago, and she was gracious enough to sign it for me. So big shout out to Carly Jackson for that. Appreciate that. But all of that is spoken about, the PWHL and everything else over on Hyperdrive Hockey, which is our flagship show. Please go check it out. It is a bunch of very fun people over in Quebec, so it has a little bit of the Quebecois and the Francophone flair for funny, and it is a really good time, so make sure you go check that out. And let's move over into our third period. Now, like I said at the beginning of this stream, before you hit like and subscribe, appreciate you. Last night and tonight, 120 minutes, and the Leafs allow one goal, and that is a regular power play goal by the Carolina Hurricanes tonight on what ended up being the only double minor in the game, and it was a really nice play by Sebastian Aho. It's almost impossible to get that. He essentially did catch it, but didn't catch all of it. And so, we got 2 games left. It'll be interesting to see who they start on Thursday and who they start on Tuesday. Again, Tuesday is against Buffalo. Thursday is the last game of the season against Detroit. Detroit has already been eliminated. The Sabres have both been eliminated, so they're just there to play spoiler. I have no doubt that they will do their best to do that. Buffalo loves nothing more than to mess with Toronto's crap. So that will be interesting to see. But like I said, in 120 minutes, in 2 of the last 4 games of the season, the Maple Leafs have 2 goaltenders that are having a friendly duke out of who's going to be the starter. Now, this is not, I think, what happened last year with Boston in terms of like Ullmark and Swayman. Because the reality is neither of these guys is leaving at the end of the season. Anthony Stolarz is still signed beyond next season, and Joseph Woll just signed a re-up contract before this season started. So those 2 guys are going to be occupying the Leafs crease for the foreseeable future, and that's a good thing. But with both of them playing so well, it does make it more difficult for people like us, and I'm sure for the coaching staff to decide on who the starter is going to be this time next week as well. So if we look at how well Joseph Woll played tonight, and the fact that he was the obvious best player on the Leafs for the entire game. He was definitely the best player in the first period, but the whole game he was just rock steady. And not to say that Anthony Stolarz last night was not. He had a very good game as well. Having said that, the Leafs did play a little bit better defensively in front of him. He did not face nearly as many shots. Now, sometimes that is a bad thing. Sometimes if a team plays well defensively and the goalie doesn't see a lot of action, it can lead to them allowing some messy goals. That was not the case last night. Even just going into last week, if we look at the game 78, so this would have been the second game in Toronto, that's Stoli versus Vasilevsky. And that game was the closest thing that the Leafs have played to a playoff game down the stretch here. And that's Anthony Stolarz that wins it. Even just the game before that I streamed was game 76. So, April 5th, so not last weekend, it would have been last weekend. Against Columbus, Stoli gets another shutout. He's posted 2 shutouts in the last 2 weeks. What's your counter argument? Yes, Joseph Woll had a good night tonight. Yes, technically Joseph Woll has more actual playoff experience. But can you look at the performance by Anthony Stolarz last night in Columbus last week and the game that they played against Tampa earlier this week? Do you really feel so good about Joseph Woll that you're unshakable? What do you think? If it's me, you could almost flip a coin at this point, honestly. Just with how solid both of them have been. I think technically Joseph Woll has won more games, but Stolarz has a higher save percentage. I think this is the first season where the Leafs have had 2 goalies post more than 20, both have 20 wins under their belt. That's a very good problem to have. I would have to guess. I think that Stolarz starts on Tuesday against Buffalo, and then I think he's your starter for game 1. Just based on the numbers. Based on the fact that he has a higher save percentage. Based on the fact that he has gotten more shutouts in the last 2 weeks. It felt like Joseph Woll stole a period. But last night, I would say Stoli stole the game. And the game against Columbus last week too, man. For them to not allow an Adam Fantilli shot on goal is a Christmas miracle, because since Fantilli has come in, he just lights the Leafs up. He lights them up. It's crazy. If it's me, I put Anthony Stolarz in. For a couple of reasons. One, like I said, the numbers tell me that he is more secure. But on top of that, Joseph Woll, when he came into the playoffs last year, he was brought in because Samsonov dropped the ball. So he's already sort of confident in that role. So that's my reason. There's no one thing that I can point to and say this is why. Because technically Joseph Woll has more wins. But I look at but then I think about tonight's game, and I could see why. If you think Joseph Woll and you're like, Lauren, you're an idiot, I can see why you would think that. Because tonight, Joseph Woll did a much better job in terms of his rebound control. There was a bunch of rebounds that happened, and they would just drop right in front of him. the last couple of games, Anthony Stolarz has looked a little bit more flustered. He has been flying out of his net more. He has been stopping the shots, but then giving up these rebounds that are going all the way back into the Leafs zone, oftentimes into the slot. Tonight, Joseph Woll did a very good job of stopping everything. That second save that he had, oh my gosh, where he goes all the way to the left and then stops it with his toe on the right, and then another save where he was on the left-hand side of the net and dives and saves it with his blocker on the right-hand side. Man, how do you not start that guy? You've changed my mind. Just, what a great problem to have. For not just the goaltending, but this is game 80, kids. I did the first game of the season this year. I believe. Oh, no, I did. No, that's game 3. Game 5. Oh, geez. This is last year's trauma. Brutal. Game 6. Game 7. That was a tough one. Game 1 of this season this year against the Habs. Montreal won 1-0. And then last night, Toronto wins 1-0 against Montreal to finish the season at game 79. We got 2 games left, kids. And we don't know who we're facing. We don't know if we've won the division yet. We don't know who our starter is. But it's all for good reasons. It's all for good reasons. This is... I don't know. Sure, there's still some concerns about goal scoring. And that will happen until next week when they score a couple playoff goals. And then I think the naysayers will be quieter. What a great problem to have. What wonderful hockey to watch this deep in the season. Normally, we knew a month and a half ago who the Leafs were facing and where the division was going to line up. And instead, everything is on the table. Everything is on the table. So let's move over into our overtime period. Again, if you could just hit like and subscribe, it would go a long way to help out that chat. And I'm going to really quickly read your comments here, because I did ask you to put some comments down in the chat. What a wobbly goal by Tavares. It's definitely true. Okay. Knuckle Puck. It's as old as the Mighty Ducks movie. Yes! Flying V! Okay. I'd face anyone that allows me to rest my players for a game or two before bashing each other's brains in. So neither Tampa or Ottawa. Terry, I'd rather face Tampa. The Leafs get up for Tampa, and in all honesty, they don't care about Ottawa. Yeah, that's true. That you have a good point. I have a hard time believing... Terry, that's a really good point, actually. I have a really hard time believing that after sort of looking down on the Sens for the last couple of years, in fairness, I'm a little bit guilty of that as well. I have a hard time believing that the Leafs are going to get up in a meaningful way against Ottawa. Having said that, it is the playoffs. So, we know William Nylander will be up. I don't know about everybody else, though. Breaking news. The Oilers lead Canada's best NHL team. The Winnipeg Jets 1-0. Let's go. Bring those mofos down. Music for Al, of course, Stoli starts versus Buffalo, but Wall against Detroit. Yeah, it sounds like that's the trend. Luke, if we can choose whoever we want for the playoffs, I pick the Timbits Timmies. Their goalie has terrible positioning. I don't think they're an option, but I like where your head's at. We got goalied in that first game against Montreal. Yeah, it's true. I remember that Leafs game had like 50 shots on goal. Who does Toronto want to face? Florida or Toronto? You'd want to face Toronto. You would want to face Toronto. Who wants to face the Cup champs, man? No one wants to face Florida right now. Are you crazy? Oh, my God. I can't think of anybody that I want. Oh, Terry, Jets tie game 1-1. Let's go. I want Tampa to face Florida, then face however many players survive that series. Yeah, whoever wins is not going to be coming out unscathed, that's for sure. The Battle of Florida has quickly become... Don't get me wrong, like, I know that the Battle of Alberta is a big thing, but the Flames were out this year. I know that the Battle of Ontario has been big, but, you know, we'll see if that happens. Obviously, the Battle of New York is a big deal when it happens. The Islanders versus the Rangers doesn't happen that frequently. And I don't know, other than, like, is the Battle of Florida now the best same-state rivalry in the sport? not province, because that's still, I still think that currently belongs to Alberta. Until, if the Leafs face the Sens in the playoffs this year, and it is like a bloody war, the Battle of Ontario is back. But right now, in this day and age, the Battle of Alberta is just better. Just in terms of the competitiveness, in terms of the gameplay, in terms of how everything is done, how they score, how both teams get up for those games. That is the more compelling battle of, within the same province right now. But if the Leafs face Ottawa in the first round, that will no longer be the case. But I have to think, I'm just thinking about the California teams, the Ducks and the Sharks aren't good enough right now to be competing against the Kings reasonably with any, reasonable expectation. Again, the Rangers and the Islanders don't like each other, but how often does that matchup happen? And they hate each other, but it's not like how Edmonton fans hate Calgary and vice versa. At least I don't think so. That has to be it. That's what I would say. Prove me wrong. I want Tampa to, I want the Battle of Florida to be 7 games of heavy hitting triple overtime. That would be great. Yes, Florida, Tampa, best rivalry. I rest my case. Sounds like you're all on the winning side too. So let's actually wrap up the stream here, kids. It's nice and early. It's set 8:12 and we are done the show. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of it. If you could just hit like and subscribe. I know I've asked 8 times the stream, but it would really make the stream go a lot longer. I mean, listen, this time next week, we're going to be in the playoffs and it's going to be awful busy in here. So it's up to you to help us get that popularity back. So anything you're able to do, again, even if it's just sharing on your social media, goes a long way. So thank you for being here with me tonight on this wonderful Sunday evening. I hope you have a wonderful Monday at work tomorrow. If you work tomorrow, if you don't, congratulations. And then we will see you on Tuesday and also on Thursday on Game Over. It will be myself and Zach to finish out strong. Dominic will not be back before Game 3 of the playoffs. He is currently in Japan. I hope that you are having a good time, Dom. And have a great night, everybody. Leafs win 4-1 over the Carolina Hurricanes based in Buffalo on Tuesday. Have a great night, everybody.